What's up, Bear Pack? Welcome back to another What If episode, where we are going to take a look today at what if Robert Baratheon never conquered the Iron Throne. And the ending might surprise you. The result is a little bit different than what I expected anyways. I made some hypotheses going forward from this, but this is the Iron Throne at the time, just before Robert Baratheon takes up arms to conquer the Iron Throne from the Targaryens. Obviously, the Targaryen king is King Aerys the Mad. His son Rhaegar is still alive, Lord of Dragonstone. Everything is just as it was before. The only change that I made was I took away Robert's claim on the Iron Throne, so he wouldn't just turn around and go ahead and usurp the throne anyways. So yeah, we're gonna go forward in time 1,000 years in game. I am using the Westeros only submod. That's why you don't see any of Essos being active. I did this for longevity and so that the game would not slow down tremendously as it pressed forward. It helped a lot. Just if you're ever going to do something like this, Westeros only submod helps so much. I was able to, it was about 20 hours of game footage compressed down. Ended up being 1,000 years in game. So yeah, we're going to jump forward 1,000 years. Y'all are going to watch a fantastic time lapse, and I am going to enjoy breaking down exactly what happened to the Iron Throne when we come back. Let's get ready, and here we go. Well, that certainly was something. And I hope you enjoyed that. That was a little bit of a different thing for me. I really enjoyed editing that time lapse for you. But here we go. We are going to break down what happened because a lot has changed. Obviously, Storm's End is no longer the seat of the... it's the seat of the Baratheons, but it's no longer the seat of the Stormlands. Instead, that title is held by another Baratheon in Griffin's Roost, which is a little strange, a little different, but at least the Baratheons are still alive. What we're going to do is we're going to begin to go around, we're going to check, we're going to begin with the Iron Throne, and we're going to get into as much as we possibly can in this area, just because it makes more sense for us to start breaking things down that way, with all the great houses and that sort of thing. Now, last time I did this, I got a little long-winded and carried away. I'm not going to do that this time. We're going to go through, we're going to find interesting characters, and we're going to stop at an appropriate time. So what I encourage you to do is leave a comment down below if you would like to see something specific in a future episode, and if you would like for us to maybe infiltrate and play in this game. We actually have the ability to. There's been literally zero slowdown. The days still fly by really, really well, and so yeah, I'm excited if y'all would like to see gameplay in this scenario, in this 1,000 years in the future, as you can see up here, then yeah, I would be more than willing to do that. Leave a comment down below letting me know who of the interesting characters that we go through you would like for me to play as. So yeah, the King of the Iron Throne is King Lucas II, the Black of the Iron Throne. He is a Waynwood of House Waynwood. That's fantastic. And intrigue-based character. Very, very good. He is married to a member of House Royce, who has actually claims on the High Lordship of Runestone. But yeah, the holdings of the Iron Throne are very similar. High Lordship of King's Landing, High Lordship of Dragonstone, the Lordship of King's Landing, and the Lordship of Sharppoint, actually, but not Dragonstone itself, which is prospering under House Goldhammer. I've never heard of that house before. Total living members is 39. Or total members is 39, living members is 11. So that is fantastic. I don't think there's a... I don't know whenever they began or when they started, but that's... I mean, that's an interesting house to hold. The Lordship of Dragonstone is fantastic. So let's take a look really quickly at the history of the Seven Kingdoms for the past 1,000 years. Yeah, it looks like the Targaryens didn't last very long, as can be expected. So here we get to King Aerys the Mad, who died bedridden and infirm at the age of 57. He was succeeded actually by Robert the Brute, who died under suspicious circumstances at the age of 23. It looks like Harbert Baratheon is the one that killed him. Does that make any sense? It doesn't to me. Lord Lionel the Laughing Storm. Yeah, I mean, that's possible, I suppose. Oh yeah, that's definitely possible. Look at his date of death, yeah. So one of the Baratheon relatives had Robert killed. And Robert never became the drunkard king that we know him. He was married to Lyanna Stark for quite a while. She died bedridden and infirm, so she died of old age, basically, at the age of 64. And it looks like after that, Robert was succeeded by Rhaegar, actually, who was beheaded by Merrick of Massey's Hook, who I don't believe plays a role later until House Massey does play a role later on. But yeah, Rhaegar was beheaded, as was, oh look, Elia Martell died in the dungeons of Lord Paramount Eddard I, the Imperious. So Eddard Stark died of cancer at the age of 53, but before that, he became a lunatic and homosexual. So that's a little interesting. Let's see how the Stark children played out just really quick. Lord Robb died of cancer, and he was the only one living at the time. He had a daughter named Brenna, who died of cancer. He had a daughter named Arya, who died a natural death at the age of 52. He had Una Stark, and Desmond Stark was his next son, who lived to be 86. That's fantastic for CK2. And Eddard Stark, who died at the age of 28, clutching his chest. So yes, things did not fare well for the Starks up in here, but we'll get there in just a little while. So Rhaegar was succeeded by his son, King Aegon VI, who at the age of 14 died of grayscale. So grayscale touched the Iron Throne. That's fantastic. It was then briefly in the hands of King Aerys once more for less than 2 years before it was conquered by King Caithan the Black of the Iron Throne, who's the son of Robert Baratheon and Lyanna Stark. Not a very good character for being the son of those two, but I suppose it comes down to, you know, I guess who was mentoring him, that kind of thing. He died of poor health at the age of 30, so obviously didn't start off that great. He was succeeded by Ronnet the Monstrous, who's the son of Stannis, and it looks like he got monstrous because of Torturer and Wroth, maybe. Again, not a good character. Ended up being a lunatic who was murdered by Selyse Faring, who I assume is related to, yeah, I'm not sure there. But that's Ronnet the Monstrous, who was succeeded by Cersei Baratheon, a little ironic. And then we also have a brief moment where the Tullys held the Iron Throne right here and died of personal combat against Justin Serret at the age of 55. This is Lord Paramount Andrian the Imperious. So actually, the Lord Paramount of the Trident held the Iron Throne for a very brief stint. Looks like just a day. So maybe whenever she died, it fell into like a Lord Protector, and he awarded it to Lord Jaime Vance of Wayfarer's Rest. Again, not the best character in the world, but I suppose a good choice. It was briefly held by the Baratheons once more, Queen Xia the Eagle, and Herbert the Tenacious, before going back to the Tullys, back to Andrian the Imperious, again for a 10-day window, so assuming that it fell into Lord Protector status again, before he gave it to another Baratheon, King Laurent the Tyrant. So not a good choice, who was actually murdered on the orders of the High Septon. So I don't see him being excommunicated, but was actually a decent character other than the tyranny, and it really wasn't that bad of a tyranny, it doesn't look like. It looks like it was more of a, that would have been like a 20-year decay. But he was the son of Queen Xia the Eagle. And then it was held very briefly for about 8 years, something like that, to Quincy the Tyrant, also the Tyrant. So a lot of tyrants holding the Iron Throne, who was excommunicated and died from too much drinking. So another Tully. Jaime the Second, the Burner of New Barrel. That's a fantastic nickname. Who was a great commander. Wow, this is a good character. Tully died under suspicious circumstances at the age of 63. Went again to Herbert the Tenacious, so he held it twice, very briefly, who was actually castrated. I didn't see that. That guy was castrated. Yikes. Before it went back to Jaime, the Burner of New Barrel, who conquered it as a claimant, and then it looks like his son, Othin Tully, inherited, but was not a good enough character to hold it. It then goes to the Tyrells, and I'm going to go through these in rapid succession because they hold it for quite a while. You have Franklin the Illustrious, who is a great character, and looks like was just a fantastic, king by all intents and purposes. Died of stress at the age of 76, but that's to be expected to hold for the king, absolutely. It then goes to his son, Guthor, who's not a good character, and then his other son, his second son, inherits King Gareth the First, Lyessa the Tyrant, Lya Tyrell, holds it very briefly, dies as a child. Back to Lyessa, then Oline Tyrell, Gareth the Second, who is also a child. Lots of children dying in the during the Tyrell years. Back to Lyessa the Tyrant. So she actually holds the title 3 times. And then Oline, like, 4 times. Oh, look at this girl. Queen Oline of the Iron Throne. 20 martial. She's strong, a brilliant commander. She became a knight. She died while pregnant under suspicious circumstances. So that's a fantastic character right here. And then it was held by Kerwin, who died. It then briefly goes to a member of House Furrows, who is the only member of House Furrows to ever exist. And not a good character. I don't know how he ended up having the title. I assume it was some kind of like transitional phase. I'm not sure where he fits in the whole line. It then goes to Lucas the First, and then Lionel the First, who actually isn't that bad in terms of stats. Traits, not so much. I'm sure he didn't produce any children, was never married, died under suspicious circumstances. It then goes to Lynora, who also died under suspicious. So look at all of these Tyrell kings, except for 2, were murdered. That's fantastic. So Lynora, and then Paya, and then Lynora one more time before it's finally taken by Lord Baron the Drunkard of Massey's Hook. And not a good character. Look, he'll get all of these negative traits. He's a formidable fighter with only 3 martial ability. That's hilarious. Died of an infected wound. It then goes to the House of Dosk. I'm not sure. It looks like there was one member prior to this who was a servant under Queen Lynora of the Iron Throne. It doesn't look like he was ever married, yet had a child, Buford the Tyrant, who was married to Margot. I don't know if there's any... I don't know if there's any way, like, I don't know how they ended up with the Kingdom of the Iron Throne as a brand new house. I don't know how people stood for this, but it looks like they held it for quite a while. Let's go back very briefly. I want to take a look at and see how long the Tullys or the Tyrells held. So it looks like 8390 to about 8464, so almost 200 years. Roughly, almost not even 100 years. That many rulers in less than 100 years. I mean, I guess that makes sense when all of them get murdered, but that's a tumultuous time for the Iron Throne. And then you have King Stefan of Dosk of the Iron Throne, Oliver the Tyrant. Again, going to go through these relatively quickly. Anselm of Dosk, Buford the Tyrant. He actually isn't that bad. Harlan Priest Hater. Oh my gosh. Hyle the Tyrant. These guys did not do well holding the throne. King Laurent the Cruel. So these look like very dark times. Brendan of Dosk, who actually has some Valyrian features somehow. Has some white hair. Helia of Dosk. Jane the Tyrant. Again, these people not doing well with this title. And then we have a brief stint with House Slate. Elric the Recluse was slain by Lord Eckhard of Skagos in personal combat. It then goes to House Moore, who actually a pretty good character is holding it, other than the fact that he has the bloody flux and is scarred, who died under suspicious circumstances. It then goes back to House Dosk. Of Dosk. Arwen Silverhair holds it for very, very briefly, who dies of the dreaded plague. And then goes to Sharena, and then Theodore the Resilient. So it looks like we're finally, still Tyrant character. Gawain, son of the Stranger. Imri. Back to Gawain, son of the Stranger. Robin, Gawain, son of the Stranger. Tanessa. All of these characters are dying of disease. So cancer has ridden House Dosk. None of them really live to old age, doesn't look like. So all in all, House of Dosk holds from 8472 all the way, it looks like the last one is 8687. So just like 200 years, House of Dosk actually holds the Iron Throne. And then briefly mixed in, you have House Peckledon that gets held for a little while. By this character is a pretty good diplomat, but still not very good characters, and all of them are tyrants. And then it looks like we have more of House Peckledon that takes over, and it looks like they hold it for 8687 to 8832, so over 100 years there. About 150 years, something like that, they hold it. And then it actually goes, I'm going to just click through those really quick so you can see their stats. It's briefly held by House Farwind, and it doesn't say how that happened. It wasn't conquered or anything like that, but who died attending to chamber business, so died of dysentery. The only character I've really seen with decent martial right there, just without all the stats to go with it. A pretty good base martial of 11, FYI. And then it looks like we have House Peckledon, who has has the old Valyrian steel sword of House Rain. Red Rain. They actually have that Valyrian steel sword. Queen Alice of the Iron Throne. I'm going to click through these really quick. You can see some of their stats and traits. None of these characters are doing really well at holding the title for very long by the looks of it. And all of them are doing it through tyranny. All of them are tyrants. And then we have a little stint where we have House Clifton. House Clifton having 115 members total, but none. They actually died out. And it looks like, I wonder if we get up to Albin, if that's the last one of House Clifton. Yep. Albin, who had children, but it looks like his last son was killed under the orders of the next king, Aegon the Wicked. So by the looks of it, that's his son would have been the last of House Clifton, but that was it. After that, they went extinct. So Aegon the Wicked, who was a formidable fighter and a knight, but not a good commander. So a good in hand-to-hand combat, but not good at leading troops. Held a pretty good amount of titles, actually, of House Rosby, and so the Rosbys hold it for quite a while too. Hold the Iron Throne. So he is the Wicked. His son, his last son. So his first two had died, and King Lionel II, the Wicked, of House Rosby of the Iron Throne, more of an intrigue built character, inherits next. And then Serene holds it. Back to Lionel the Wicked. It goes to his son, Alan the Tormentor. And then Lambert the Tyrant, where it's briefly passed on to Harris the Warrior Farwind. So the Farwinds hold it again. And then it's conquered by King Gawain the First. And then we have finally a character who's still a tyrant, but is known as the Holy. So, and it's a very, very, very small amount of tyranny that's holding. These characters who had like negative 100 must have like really, really chomped down and clamped the bit, so to speak. So we have King Malagorn the Holy. And then we have Theodore II, Mark, Gawain II, Mark again, Tanton the Prudent, Lambert the Tyrant. Yeah, look, this guy must have really poured it on. I mean, that's like 20 orders of measure of tyranny. At a decay of 5 years, I mean, that's 100 years for that tyranny to decay. So that's King Lambert the Trident, the Tyrant, who actually has pretty good martial. Alan II, Reynard the Tyrant, Tanton the Unready, and then Paxter the Unready. And so it looks like then it passes briefly to House Tackerdon, who still has 12 living members and 289 total members. So they actually go back quite a ways by the look of it. And let's see. They hold it King Manfred the Depraved and Theoden the Tyrant. And then you have Kenneth the Holy of House Mead, who's actually a drowned god Ironborn. Who then, it looks like that's the interim period right here. It looks like some of these brief stints are just very interim, like holding it over as a Lord Protector. So like here, House Peckledon holds it only for, less than 2 months. So that may have been a Lord Protector thing. So Kenneth the Holy passes it to Raleigh of House Karen, the Truthful. So House Karen holds it. They have 308 total members and 13 living members in the current time period. So Raleigh the Truthful, and then Lionel the Third, Queen Felice the Monster. So it looks like she was a torturer and a tyrant, but she also had gonorrhea. She was a lunatic and she was stressed. So not a good outcome for this girl. And then you have Kasana, who tries to hold the kingdom together with her tyrannical stain of her mother and actually her father. No, it was her sister. Her sister. And then it looks like it passes to Jaemund of House Karen, who died of severe stress. It looks like he was really not supposed to be in the line. It was his grandmother. It was Kasana. Eldred the First holds very briefly. No tyranny on him. And then you have King Dordan, who's actually a pretty decent character, other than the small amount of tyranny that he had. 21 martial and 13 diplomacy is pretty good. He's quick. He was a knight. Seems by all intents and purposes one of the better characters to hold the throne. Like I said, other than that little bit of tyranny. And you have Eldred II. And then you have Gianna, who was widowed and went to go be a silent sister. So she conquered it as a claimant. And then she had a child, Lena the Unchaste, who died a mangled mess at the age of 30. Actually holds a Valyrian steel sword that's unnamed at this point. And then you have Danwell of House Gosworth, who holds it in more than just a holdover fashion. Holds it for a little while, actually. And, not a terrible character, but dies under suspicious circumstances, where we see the first instance of House Waynwood holding the throne. And they hold it very, very briefly. Looks like for less than 2 years they hold it, like a year and a half. They hold the Iron Throne under Sir Giles Waynwood. And then it goes back to House Gosworth. So look, he was elected. House Waynwood was elected to the Iron Throne. And then it goes back to House Gosworth right here, who probably just had the claim. And then we go a brief stint with Eddarion the Tormentor, who probably held it as Lord Protector, who actually has a dragon egg. The Starks had a dragon egg. That's fantastic. And it went to his son, Lord Paramount Edric of the North, who is still alive and not married. So 15 years old. It looks like they don't have ice anymore. We'll have to go through and look. And then we have basically the very first, at least decent king He's held it for quite a while. Looks like 14 years. King Lucas the Black, who is disfigured and craven. So yeah, more of an intrigue build for him. But that takes us through the history of the Iron Throne. Without getting too deep into all of this, I want to go ahead and kind of just take a brief look around and see who the ruling houses are, and we can get into all of the histories and stuff like we did of the Iron Throne. You have House Roseridge, who is the Lord Paramounts in the Reach. Again, like I said, you have a Baratheon still in the Stormlands. It looks like House Vaith holds Dorne. Lemonwood looks like it's under the Westerlands for some reason, and Sunspear. And the Westerlands are held by House Miller, which looks like a created house by the look of it. So I'm not sure what happened to the Lannisters. We'll have to go take a look at that. It looks like the seat of the Riverlands is actually right here in Willow Wood. Shout out to Lord Paramount Dickon in the Custom House series, but it's actually held by House Hay. Did they ever rebuild Harrenhal? They have House of Viewpoint is holding Harrenhal. No, they have not rebuilt Harrenhal. They have done quite a few improvements to the castle over the years, but they've never taken the decision to rebuild it itself. It looks like Old Stones was colonized at some point and is now held by House Gosling. Wonder if there's a Ryan in there somewhere. Relatively new house. It looks like the seat of the Vale is actually the Freylands, still held by a Vale house in House Royce. And it looks like another member of House Royce is actually holding the Eyrie and the Bloody Gate. And so they're in war right now. They're still technically under the Iron Throne. So the Iron Throne has not dissipated. The Iron Islands are held by House Farwind. Actually a decent character who is not a tyrant, ironically. It's always sad when the Ironborn are better at ruling than you are. And then you also have the Starks still in Winterfell, as we pointed out, Lord Paramount Edric of the North. The Night's Watch still exists, which is a little surprising, but held by a pretty good character. I'd be interested to go through there and just take a look at the stats of the characters that ended up there, because, you know, election, they elect the best character. So you're always going to have a character with good stats. It's not going to be some scrub sitting as Lord Commander. So yes, this is the state of the Iron Throne 1,000 years after Robert's conquest would have started. But if Robert Baratheon had never conquered the Iron Throne, this is what would happen. And as I said, fairly surprising. Fairly surprising for me anyways, because I expected, you know, a lot more Targaryens. And as we can go back and see, just really quick, it doesn't look like the Targaryens lasted beyond really the characters that we know. Looks like the last member of House Targaryen was King Aegon VI, so the son of Rhaegar, and no one else survived. And I really don't think there's any High Valyrians even left in here. And what I did was, whenever I set this up, I made it so High Valyrian culling was off. So any High Valyrian courtiers stayed in there. They weren't culled out. So if they were able to reproduce and keep their lines pure, they still exist, but I don't see any. Driftmark is... oh, he's held by High Valyrian, but he doesn't have any High Valyrian traits, that's for sure. So yeah. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I'm going to leave this here, so I'm going to let you guys enjoy this for just a little while, and you know, if we want me to come back and go through some of the things, if you want me to jump in and play as one of these characters, let me know. I would kind of be interested to play as this Stark character. It'd be a little bit difficult overcoming the homosexual and the fertility hit that takes, but he's not married. He's still in Regency. Actually, House Karstark has a weird sigil, so that's a new House Karstark, ironically. But anyways, I digress. I'll go ahead and end this here. I hope you all have enjoyed this episode. If you have, please be sure to hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, please be sure to do that as well. And let me know. I'll see you next time.